Welcome to the channel. I'm really excited for this new series and for this video. So this is going to be a self-discovery series. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. And in this video, we're going to talk about how to get to know yourself. A couple of simple steps. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things to get to know yourself. And this feels like, okay, we are constantly getting to know ourselves, right? We are on a journey, on a life path. We are the only people or the only person that is going to be with us from the start into the end. Like it's us. And typically we'd be like, yeah, I know myself. But have you ever felt that you don't really know who you are? You're a little bit lost. You're feeling a little bit like you're kind of lost in space a little bit. And you're like, where do I even start? And if you haven't felt this way, I mean, you're welcome to keep watching. But if you have felt this way, I really want you to keep watching because I have felt this many times throughout my life, and I always go back to these practices and I always go back to these things to anchor into the new version of me, because we're always kind of like washing away things that aren't us and then rediscovering us, and then washing away and then rediscovering. It's that classic life situation. We are always in this evolution, and sometimes in mainstream we forget about that, and we're like, of course I know myself. I've been with myself this whole time. So the first thing we're going to get into is walks. You're like, really? But listen to me. Walks, nothing in your headphones. You're not listening or talking to anybody. You're just walking with yourself. You're listening to yourself. Walking gives you this momentum and this physicalness, this activity where when we're doing something like driving, it lets us get into this other state where we're accessing different parts of our brain, parts of ourself. So if we're in activity on a long drive, or if we're walking, especially moving our body, we get to listen to what's coming forward. So we get to listen to, our thoughts, our feelings that are coming up, things that we might want to do. Maybe our soul self is coming in. Maybe some spirit guides are coming in. It's like listening to what is going on in the brain and then identifying which pieces those are. So sometimes when we feel really lost within ourselves, we feel this chaos of what should I do? Where should I go? What should I try? Just this kind of chaos within our brain. And it can cause this restlessness feeling. And the more chaotic we feel, the more unease we feel, and the more confused we are with who we are. So walking to try to identify and get used to those sounds, those frequencies, those voices, those tones of okay, this is my soul self, this is my ego self. There's different activities that will help this, but I'm telling you, going on 15-minute walks, 30-minute walks with myself, that is just a silent walk, is the most therapeutic thing that you could do to get to know yourself. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a little bit similar, but journaling. This feels like, oh, just journal. But also a huge thing. I had started to really get into this when I read the book, The Artist's Way. And in her process of getting reconnected to your artist or exploring your inner artist, you journal every single day in the morning. Now, granted, I really try every single day, but I miss them here and there. But I'm saying journaling, especially if you follow some journal prompts. I'm going to try to make a guide of different journal prompts that'll be on my website that you can go through to really get to know yourself. That will be helpful. But just journaling to see where you're at, how you're feeling, what do you do, what do you want to do, are really helpful to just kind of get to know you and get to know the sound of your voice, what your opinions are, how you feel about things. Usually when we don't when we don't know ourselves, we don't know how we feel, we don't know what we want to do, we just feel like this, suspended in space, and it's so uncomfortable. But these tools and few things that you could do daily or weekly are just going to help you feel so much better and feel like, oh, I finally have a grasp of me. So third thing is travel. Absolutely 10 out of 10 recommend. If you do not know, in my other videos, I'm going to connect more on traveling, how to travel solo. I lived over a year in Asia last year and did that, backpacking all of Asia for, solo traveling. And traveling, even if it's not overseas, if it's to the next city, if it's to a new coffee shop, it's like getting yourself into a new environment around different people, completely different. Exposing yourself to newness allows you to truly maybe be your real self. Because at times when we're always with people that we know, or we're in settings all the time, like you are you, but then people also have an idea of who you are. And it kind of influences you to be that way because they expect you to be that version of you. So when you're in a new setting around new people in a new environment, you could be whoever you want. And typically that is more of your authentic version of you. It's more of your authentic self when you feel free to truly take off any masks that you have put on in survival, or just because that's what people interpret you to be. But when people like, oh, but this is actually me. The more that you do that in new settings allows you solidify, oh yeah, this is my authentic me self. This is me, how I communicate, how I react, how I feel, what I want to do. And then when you go back into those settings of people knowing you, then it's easier to come through with that authentic self rather than the self that they think that they know you as, if that makes sense. So travel is huge. Whether or not you're traveling overseas is like always recommend it. But if you can't right now, try that. Go to a new little town, new coffee shop, new grocery store, new library, new anything, whatever you typically like to do. I love to explore coffee shops. So if I want to feel into myself more, I'm going to take a journal. If I'm feeling lost ever, I'm going to find a coffee shop that feels inspiring where I can sit for a few hours and just journal and explore and let myself feel into myself and really spend some time with myself, which will be the third thing is that we're going to talk about, or actually that'll be 4. So we said walks, journal, travel, solo dates is my next thing. So this can be like what we just talked about. It's literally going somewhere with yourself. Like if you think about like, oh, if I'm going to date somebody, if I'm going to get to know somebody, I want to go out with them. I want to spend time with them. I want to do fun things with them. I'm going to ask them questions. And so when this happens of like, okay, if I don't feel like I know me, I have to date me. I have to figure out what those things are. I have to figure out what I like to do, where I like to go, what do I like to listen to. And so you take yourself out on these specific solo dates where you're only in your own energy and you get to go explore things, places, people, activities with yourself. It's one of the most profound things you can do. And if you have never done it and that makes you feel uncomfortable going out with yourself, then that's probably something that you need to start with. And I'm going to make a video that talks about those different easy ways to take yourself on a date, because it can be very like, what am I going to do out in public on my own? Like, what if people are looking at me and all this kind of stuff? So I've been there. I've had those thoughts. I've had those feelings. You'll work through it. I'm going to have a little starter kit video for that. So I'm going to make note of that. But the next thing is healing work. So sometimes as we go down a healing journey or a path or spiritual awakening, we realize a lot of aspects of us are just reactions of trauma, of things that are family patterns, that are coping mechanisms, and they're not really us. It's not really your true, it's not really you. It's just like how you cope. And so when you do healing work, when you explore the traumas, your childhood, womb awakening, when you start to dive into these different parts of you, the shadow, the ego, all of these things, you start to realize, oh, that's a mask. That's a projection. Here I'm being triggered. And you start to feel into more of who you are and who you aren't. And typically a lot of the things that we project out or want to be shown or have others to see us is a mask. It's not our true selves. So if we don't know our true selves, we're going to really keep the mask on wherever we are in life. And so if we don't know our true selves, other people aren't going to know our true selves. And then you can't really connect fully with anybody or anything because you're just a pretend version of you and not your authentic version of you. So when you do healing work and you get into those little nooks and crannies and you start to reprogram your mind, start to go into this ancestral healing and trauma and maybe do some energy work, maybe you're doing therapy, all this stuff, you begin to be more connected to who you are and who you aren't. Next is kind of bleeds into that is learning the parts of you. So parts of you could be the childhood and could be the protector, could be your teen self, could be your ego self, your soul self, your higher self, your alien self, all these different areas that kind of go in and you're like, maybe it's your work self. It's the self that you are with your parents, the self you are with your friends. And the more that we get to be in our authenticness, we get to merge those things together and no longer become separate, because how we are in one area area is like we kind of shift into, oh, I could be this way with this person, but not this way. So that kind of shows you, okay, you're not really knowing who you are in your true expression because you are navigating and putting on different masks for different people. So the more that you get to identify and recognize those things, the more you start to learn about yourself and the more that you start to take those off and just show your real you. And so that's the authentic self versus the mask. The next thing is trying activities. So this is our last little blip, but trying new things, trying new activities. Maybe it's like painting or dancing, a new movement, yoga, lifting. It could be going out and doing something that you've always wanted to do but haven't. Any new activities gets to show us a new part of ourselves, and we can kind of say like, oh yeah, that's for me, that's not for me, that feels more in congruence or more in alignment with me, or this isn't. And instead of just staying in the same lane doing the same things because that's what you've always done, that doesn't sound very fun. It allows you to be like, oh, I could go try sewing or like knitting, or I could like go out and learn how to code or make websites, or I don't know, whatever you're interested in. Sometimes we stay doing the same activities in the same career and have the same friends and have listened to the same podcasts, and it's just all this is who I am. But I challenge you to think maybe that's not who just you are. Listen to a different podcast, a different sound, different music. See what unlocks a different version of you, and let yourself kind of explore all of what is you instead of just a narrow part. So those are some fun ways to really get to know yourself if you're feeling kind of stuck, lost. Those are some ways to get some clarity. And yeah, so you can access my website. I'll link below of different journal prompts. And also you can look through the channel of ways to take yourself out on a date for the first time. So I'll add those in the link. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, have a question, and subscribe to the channel. Would love to have you here. And I will see you in the next video. Remember, stay alien and get weird. Bye for now.